Hey everyone! Welcome back to Rewilding the Future. Imagine a time when massive herds of bison thundered across the plains, when saber-toothed cats stalked the forests, and when one of the most powerful predators to ever roam North America, the dire wolf, hunted in legendary packs. For thousands of years, the dire wolf helped shape this continent's ecosystems. And then, like so many giants of the Ice Age, it vanished. But what if we could bring it back, not just as a symbol of the past, but as a living force for ecological renewal? Welcome to the frontier of conservation. This is the story of rewilding the new dire wolves in North America. In this video, we'll explore the fascinating history of the dire wolves, from their Ice Age reign to their extinction around 10,000 years ago, why North America desperately needs their modern counterparts back, and how these apex predators could help restore balance to overgrazed and fragmented landscapes, and the ecological challenges ahead, including the risk of hybridization with existing canids like gray wolves, and why careful genetic stewardship is critical to preserve the distinct identity and role of these apex predators, where rewilding efforts could begin from the northern Rockies to the Great Plains, and what makes these regions suitable for a large cooperative carnivore. How the new dire wolves would interact with native and introduced wildlife, from deer, elk, and bison to wild horses, invasive boar, and even future rewilding efforts like mammoths and lions. And finally, we'll dive into the bold concept of Pleistocene rewilding, a visionary movement to restore ancient ecosystems and revive Earth's natural resilience. Let's start this fascinating journey. The dire wolves first appeared in the fossil record around 250,000 years ago and persisted until about 10,000 years ago. Their remains have been discovered as far north as Alaska and Canada, and as far south as Venezuela, indicating a broad New World distribution. Morphologically, they were larger and more robust than modern gray wolves, with stronger jaws adapted to prey such as bison, horses, and camels of the Pleistocene megafauna. Genetic analyses of ancient dire wolf specimens, including a 13,000-year-old tooth from Ohio and a 72,000-year-old ear bone from Idaho, have revealed that dire wolves represent a distinct lineage separate from gray wolves, coyotes, and jackals. Unlike other North American canids, dire wolves show no evidence of interbreeding with gray wolves, underscoring their unique evolutionary path. Bone assemblages from multiple sites, including Rancho La Brea, Natural Trap Cave, Wyoming, and Old Crow, Yukon, indicate that dire wolves lived and hunted in social groups. The size and composition of these groups likely varied with prey availability, much as in modern wolves. Skull morphology suggests they delivered powerful, slashing bites, while limb proportions imply they were built more for stamina than speed, ideal for chasing down large, sometimes dangerous prey over rough terrain. Dire wolves coexisted with other large carnivores, including saber-toothed cats, Smilodon fatalis, short-faced bears, Arctodus simus, and early gray wolves. Isotopic and dental microwear studies reveal niche partitioning. Dire wolves specialized on large herd-forming ungulates, while other predators focused on mixed-size prey or ambush hunting in cover. As the Pleistocene megafauna began to decline, gray wolves, more adaptable in diet and habitat, likely encroached on remaining prey resources, intensifying competition. The extinction of dire wolves approximately 10,000 years ago coincides with the terminal Pleistocene megafaunal die-off and significant climatic shifts. As temperatures warmed and glaciers retreated, the populations of large herbivores they depended upon plummeted. This reduction in prey biomass likely strained dire wolf populations, reducing their numbers and genetic diversity. Concurrent with these environmental changes, gray wolves, Canis lupus, expanded their range into North America from Eurasia. Gray wolves may have outcompeted dire wolves for diminishing prey resources due to greater dietary flexibility and pack dynamics. Additionally, the arrival of human hunters further pressured large predators, contributing to habitat alteration and direct competition for game. Advances in paleogenomics have allowed scientists to sequence fragments of the dire wolf genome from well-preserved fossils. Analyses of these ancient DNA samples have confirmed the species' deep divergence from other canids, dating back over 5 million years. Insights into key genes responsible for bone development and size help explain the robust build of dire wolves compared to modern gray wolves. These genetic reconstructions underpin current de-extinction proposals, guiding which traits to target when editing the genomes of extant canids to approximate dire wolf morphology and physiology. In late 2024 and early 2025, Colossal Biosciences announced the birth of 3 gene-edited gray wolves, Romulus and Remus, males born October 1, 2024, and Khaleesi, female born January 30, 2025, engineered to express approximately 20 dire wolf traits by editing 14 key genes in gray wolf cells. These pups were carried to term in domestic dog surrogates, marking the first time any animal with dire wolf-inspired genetics has lived in over 10,000 years. Colossal emphasizes that their approach uses the morphology-based species concept. By editing genes related to size, fur pattern, and cranial shape, they aim to recreate the form and function of Canis dirus without inserting ancient DNA directly into the genome. Despite media headlines proclaiming the return of dire wolves, many researchers stress that these animals are genetically gray wolves with targeted edits, not bona fide members of an extinct species. Beth Shapiro, Colossal's chief scientist, clarified that Colossal never spliced ancient dire wolf DNA into their subjects, but rather edited gray wolf genomes to resemble dire wolves in specific traits. The IUCN Species Survival Commission Canid Specialist Group has stated that such phenotypic proxies do not restore the extinct species conservation status and may instead complicate efforts to conserve extant canids. De-extinction initiatives raise profound ethical questions about human intervention in evolutionary history and ecological restoration. Proponents argue that reviving lost species could aid in restoring damaged ecosystems, while critics caution that resources may be better spent preserving endangered extant species and habitats. There are also concerns about the welfare of surrogates and gene-edited animals, whose long-term health and behavior in modern ecosystems remain uncertain. As de-extinction science advances, ongoing dialogue among geneticists, ecologists, ethicists, and policymakers will be essential to navigate the trade-offs between technological possibility and ecological responsibility. Romulus, Remus, and Khaleesi, designed to express key dire wolf traits. While these animals exhibit the size and morphology of prehistoric dire wolves, experts emphasize they remain gray wolves with edits rather than true resurrected dire wolves, sparking debate over authenticity, ethics, and ecological implications. And now we'll move on and talk about rewilding the new dire wolves.
Rewilding refers to the process of restoring ecosystems by reintroducing species that once played key ecological roles. In the case of the newly gene-edited dire wolves, the goal isn't to reintroduce the exact extinct Canis dirus, but rather to release a functional equivalent, modern grey wolves modified to resemble dire wolves in size, strength, and behavior, into select parts of North America. This approach is being explored as a way to restore balance to ecosystems that have been severely altered by human activity, climate change, and the extinction of large predators. Why North America needs the new dire wolves. Apex predators regulate herbivore populations, which in turn helps maintain healthy vegetation and biodiversity. The absence of dire wolves after their extinction may have led to overpopulation of certain herbivores and mesopredators, disrupting ecosystems. Bringing back dire wolves could curb these imbalances by controlling species like deer, elk, and smaller predators. Dire wolves were uniquely adapted to prey on large Pleistocene mammals. Though megafauna like mammoths and giant bison are extinct, ecosystems still have large ungulates that could benefit from natural predation pressure. The new dire wolves, larger and more robust than grey wolves, could fill this niche more effectively. Introducing these gene-edited wolves may increase ecological variety and resilience by adding a new top predator with distinct traits, which might adapt differently to habitats and prey than existing grey wolves or coyotes. Human-driven habitat loss and climate change have stressed North American wildlife. Reintroducing predators like the new dire wolves could restore natural cycles and improve ecosystem health, aiding adaptation to changing conditions. How rewilding could be implemented: by identifying large, connected wilderness areas with sufficient prey and minimal human-wildlife conflicts is essential. Potential sites might include national parks and reserves in the western US and Canada. Early-stage rewilding would require close scientific monitoring of wolf health, behavior, prey populations, and ecological impact. Adaptive management strategies could help mitigate conflicts with livestock or human activities. Successful rewilding depends on public support. Educating local communities about the ecological role and benefits of the new dire wolves will be vital, as well as implementing compensation programs for livestock losses if needed. Reintroducing an apex predator like the new dire wolves promotes trophic cascades that boost plant and animal diversity and ecosystem resilience. Healthy predator-prey dynamics contribute to soil health, water quality, and carbon sequestration by controlling herbivore pressure on vegetation. The Rewilding project offers unparalleled opportunities to study predator ecology, genetics, and conservation biology in real time. Restoring an iconic species linked to North America's ancient past carries symbolic value and deepens human connection to nature. Bringing back the new, dire wolves could offer North America a powerful ecological tool to restore lost functions in nature. While they are not genetically identical to their extinct ancestors, these wolves may fulfill a similar role in today's degraded landscapes. With careful planning, monitoring, and community involvement, rewilding could help heal ecosystems while also testing the boundaries and responsibilities of de-extinction science. And now we will move on and talk about the risks of hybridization in nature between new dire wolves and grey wolves.
If there are risks of hybridization between the new dire wolf and grey wolves, the answer is yes, because the new dire wolves are created by editing grey wolf genomes rather than resurrecting a completely divergent Canis lineage. They remain genetically very close to modern wolves. In practice, that means Colossal's editing process starts with grey wolf genetic material and tweaks perhaps a few dozen genes to approximate dire wolf morphology. Aside from those edits, the genomes are still essentially grey wolf. Under the biological species concept, animals that can freely interbreed and produce fertile offspring are the same species, so these gene-edited dire wolves would almost certainly recognize each other as wolves and be capable of mating with nearby wild or captive grey wolf packs. Anytime a pack of gene-edited dire wolves shares range or mingles with grey wolves, including Mexican wolves, red wolves, eastern wolves, or Arctic wolves, mixed pairings are extremely likely. Even if the gene edits include loci that influence skull shape, body size, or coat pattern, they do not create reproductive barriers, so a male dire wolf could sire pups with a female grey wolf, and vice versa. Because both parents descend from the same grey wolf lineage, with only a few targeted edits, their offspring would almost certainly be fertile. In other words, you would not get sterile hybrids, as you might when two distinct Canis species, for example grey wolf with coyote, occasionally interbreed. The pups of a dire wolf with grey wolf pairing would simply inherit a mix of edited and unedited wolf genes, and they would be capable of full reproduction. Over time, if dire wolves intermingle freely with local wolf populations, the specific gene edits that confer dire wolf-like traits, for example larger jaws, broader skulls, could become diluted, either by back-crossing with unedited grey wolves or by subsequent generations breeding more with pure grey wolves. Conversely, unedited grey wolf alleles might flow into the dire wolf stock, also diluting the selected dire traits. Managing pure lines of gene-edited dire wolves in the wild would therefore be extremely difficult without strict containment or large founder groups. Any overlap with small, vulnerable wolf populations, like Mexican grey wolves or red wolves, carries extra risk. Those endangered subspecies already face genetic bottlenecks and hybridization concerns with coyotes or feral dogs. Introducing a third pool of grey wolf-derived genotypes could further complicate recovery efforts, making it hard to maintain the genetic distinctiveness of, for example, the Mexican wolf. Management strategies to mitigate hybridization, like to release new dire wolves only in areas where no wild grey wolf packs exist and where strict boundaries, fenced reserves, islands, prevent contact. If the goal is ecological function rather than establishing a self-sustaining breeding population, managers could sterilize released individuals while still allowing them to hunt, so they cannot produce hybrid litters. Releasing dozens of fully gene-edited pups simultaneously can help maintain a high ratio of pure direwolf genes, but this still doesn't prevent eventual interbreeding if any grey wolves infiltrate. Regularly trap and genotype local canids to detect early signs of hybridization. If hybrid litters appear, managers could remove or separate those individuals to preserve genetic integrity. The bottom line is, because these animals are by design gray wolves with a handful of edits, they will readily hybridize with any wild or captive gray wolf pack. If maintaining a discrete, dire wolf-like gene pool is important, especially for research or ecological function studies, then strict physical or reproductive barriers will be necessary. Otherwise, hybridization is almost guaranteed, and the distinguishing dire traits would steadily dilute into the broader wolf population. And now we'll move on and talk about where to rewild the new dire wolves in North America.
Rewilding the gene-edited new dire wolves requires choosing locations that balance ecological suitability, safety for both animals and humans, and potential for positive ecosystem impact. Here are some prime candidates and reasons why they are suitable. The Great Plains historically hosted vast populations of megafauna, bison, elk, deer, that were natural prey for dire wolves. Today, many herbivore populations are high, often causing overgrazing and ecosystem imbalance. The relatively open terrain makes it ideal for large predators to hunt and patrol wide territories. Reintroducing the new dire wolves here could help control overpopulated ungulates, restore grassland health, and increase biodiversity. Large, relatively remote ranchlands and protected areas in states like Montana, Wyoming, and the Canadian prairies provide suitable habitat. This region features diverse ecosystems, deserts, canyons, and mountains, with existing grey wolf populations that could interbreed or benefit from increased genetic diversity. Historically, dire wolves roamed these parts, and their presence could help control populations of deer and smaller prey. The climate resilience and robustness of the gene-edited wolves could help them adapt here. The presence of national parks and tribal lands with strong conservation policies supports sustainable rewilding. Eastern North America lost large predators like wolves and cougars centuries ago, leading to overpopulation of deer and degradation of forest understory vegetation. The reintroduction of a strong predator like the new dire wolves could restore balance. Restoring predator-prey dynamics here would enhance forest regeneration, reduce tick populations by lowering deer numbers, and improve overall ecosystem health. Protected areas and national forests provide safe zones for rewilding efforts. These regions have extensive wilderness, protected lands, and existing wolf populations. They offer complex terrain and ample prey species, providing an ideal environment for large carnivores to thrive. Introducing gene-edited wolves could boost genetic diversity and resilience among existing canids. These ecosystems already support top predators, easing the integration of new wolves. This area has dense forests, wetlands, and abundant prey like white-tailed deer and moose. It already supports healthy populations of grey wolves, but the introduction of larger, more robust dire wolf proxies could enhance predator diversity and ecosystem dynamics. The reintroduction could help manage prey populations that cause forest regeneration issues. The region's conservation infrastructure and experience with wolf management also provide a solid framework for monitoring and community engagement. Dire wolves once ranged into Mexico, and the rugged Sierra Madre offers vast wilderness with relatively low human density. Prey species include deer and peccaries, making it an ecologically viable location. Rewilding here could restore an apex predator that has been missing for thousands of years, promoting ecosystem health and biodiversity in an area experiencing deforestation and habitat fragmentation. Vast, sparsely populated boreal forests offer extensive wilderness with natural prey like moose, caribou, and smaller mammals. Dire wolves' robust size and hunting ability could help regulate herbivore populations and prevent overbrowsing. This region provides long-term habitat security with minimal human disturbance, promoting healthy population growth and ecosystem function. But the extreme winters and seasonal food scarcity could test the adaptability of the gene-edited wolves. Close collaboration with indigenous groups would be vital. While currently home to smaller canids like the red wolf, Canis rufus, parts of the southeast historically hosted large predators. Reintroducing larger wolves in carefully managed reserves or wilderness corridors could revive predator roles in controlling deer and feral hog populations. Restoring predator presence may help combat issues like overgrazing, crop damage, and the spread of diseases such as Lyme disease through controlling deer. High human density and habitat fragmentation require creating protected corridors and educating local populations to minimize conflicts. Yellowstone National Park and its surrounding national forests and wildlife refuges already harbor thriving gray wolf populations, elk, bison, mule deer, and other ungulates. The deep snowpacks, rugged canyons, and mosaic of meadows and forests create ideal hunting grounds. The new dire wolves, larger with more powerful jaws and greater endurance, could help control burgeoning elk herds in park backcountry and winter ranges, reducing elk browsing on willow and aspen. This, in turn, would accelerate riparian restoration, stabilize stream banks, and benefit beaver, songbirds, and fish. And now we will move on and talk about the interaction between new dire wolves to herbivores, birds, and predators.
As generalist browsers, deer populations often surge in the absence of large predators, leading to overbrowsing of young trees and shrubs. Packs of larger, more robust dire wolves would exert stronger predation pressure than modern gray wolves alone. By selectively culling weaker or older individuals, dire wolves would help shift deer age structure toward healthier cohorts, reduce browsing hotspots, and allow regeneration of forest understories. Over time, this can lead to denser shrub cover and increased songbird diversity beneath the canopy. Caribou herds face steep declines due to habitat loss, climate change, and predation imbalances. In boreal and tundra settings, dire wolf packs could help stabilize populations by keeping numbers in check, particularly during winter when weakened individuals are most vulnerable. Their presence would discourage caribou from over-concentrating in small wintering grounds, promoting more even grazing across the landscape, which benefits lichens and ground layer vegetation essential for herd resilience. Elk are highly gregarious and form large herds that can decimate riparian willow and aspen stands when unchecked. Dire wolves' greater size and bite force would enable them to tackle larger bull elk even through deep snowpacks, conditions in which elk are most vulnerable. This would mirror the Yellowstone trophic cascade effect seen with gray wolves, but potentially at an accelerated pace, leading to faster willow recovery along streams, improved beaver dam construction, and more stable stream banks. Moose generally inhabit boreal forests and wetlands, where they browse on aquatic plants and woody browse. While gray wolves can prey on calf moose, adult moose are often too large or dangerous. Larger dire wolves hunting cooperatively in packs could take down subadult or even adult moose more reliably, thinning moose densities to levels that prevent riparian overbrowsing and promote willow and alder regeneration. Healthier riparian zones would, in turn, improve water quality and habitat for amphibians and fish. Pronghorn are the fastest North American ungulates, evolved to outrun cursorial predators. Yet, their long-distance endurance is limited. Dire wolves' greater stamina and cooperative hunting strategies would allow packs to work together to exhaust and isolate pronghorn, especially in open grasslands. By keeping pronghorn herds from overgrazing sagebrush and bunchgrass communities, dire wolves would support greater plant diversity, benefiting ground-nesting birds and small mammals. Feral wild boar, also called feral pigs, are omnivorous and highly destructive, rooting up vegetation, degrading soil structure, and preying on nests of ground-nesting birds and amphibians. Dire wolf packs, with their greater size, stronger jaws, and cooperative hunting, could help suppress boar numbers by targeting lone adult boars and family sounders. Even partial reduction of boar densities would lessen rooting pressure, help restore native understory plants, and reduce competition with ground-nesting wildlife. Over time, this predation could encourage recovery of native ground cover and improve water infiltration in forest and wetland soils. Collared peccary, javelina, occupy desert scrub and thorn forest habitats in the southwest and Mexico. They travel in groups and can be aggressive, using their tusks for defense. New dire wolves hunting in semi-arid landscapes would likely focus on the smaller, weaker peccaries, especially young or injured individuals, rather than full-strength herds. Even low levels of predation can alter peccary foraging patterns, reducing overbrowsing of cacti and shrubs and creating spatial refuges where vegetation regenerates. Predation risk also promotes vigilance and tighter grouping, which can indirectly change peccary grazing footprints and benefit plant diversity. Mountainous terrain and sheer cliffs make bighorn sheep challenging prey for modern gray wolves. Dire wolves' enhanced strength and endurance, coupled with pack coordination, would allow them to more safely and successfully stalk bighorn lambs and subadults during spring and early summer. By limiting lamb survival rates to more natural historical levels, dire wolves would prevent overpopulation on alpine meadows, reduce grazing pressure on delicate montane grasses and wildflowers, and help maintain a balance between sheep herds and high-elevation plant communities. The massive herds of American bison once roamed the Great Plains in vast numbers, shaping grassland structure through grazing and wallowing. Today's bison populations are confined to parks and reserves and are often managed to prevent overgrazing. New dire wolves, with their superior strength and pack coordination, could prey opportunistically on bison calves and the occasional weakened adult, especially during harsh winters or disease outbreaks. This natural predation would mimic the ancient role of dire wolves, helping to regulate herd demographics, stimulate patchy grazing patterns that boost plant diversity, and reduce the need for human-led herd thinning. Musk oxen thrive in tundra-like habitats, for example northern Canada, Alaska, forming tight defensive circles. Dire wolves, with greater size and endurance than gray wolves, could surround and pressure calves when they momentarily break from the group, especially in winter, when deep snow handicaps muskox mobility. Packs may chase a calf into deeper drifts, forcing it to tire before the group defends. Controlled predation on the most vulnerable ensures muskox herds remain genetically robust and do not overconsume grasses and lichens. This grazing moderation prevents the collapse of tundra vegetation and supports a mosaic of forage for caribou, ptarmigan, and other tundra fauna. Additionally, muskox carcasses provide carrion resources for wolves and scavengers, for example, ravens, Arctic foxes, reinforcing nutrient cycles. Feral horses graze extensively on grasslands and riparian corridors, often at densities that suppress native grasses and outcompete native ungulates. While adult horses are large and formidable, dire wolf packs could prey on foals and weaker individuals, especially in winter when deep snow slows equines. Even occasional foal predation can influence herd distribution, steering horses away from sensitive riparian zones and encouraging more ephemeral use of meadows. This can alleviate grazing pressure, promote riparian vegetation recovery, and help restore grassland heterogeneity. Burros occupy arid rangelands and compete with native wildlife for water and forage. Similar to mustangs, dire wolves would likely target young or infirm donkeys, particularly during drought or when water sources concentrate animals into predictable gatherings. Removing even a small number of burrows can reduce trampling around waterholes, lower competition for scarce desert grasses, and indirectly benefit species such as pronghorn, tortoises, and drought-sensitive plants. Though not native to North America, small herds of escaped plains zebra have established themselves in parts of Texas and other southwestern states. These equids graze on grasslands year-round, competing with native herbivores and altering fire regimes through their grazing patterns. The new dire wolves, with their pack hunting strategies, would likely view foals and weaker adults as viable prey. By culling zebra herds, especially in overgrazed or ecologically sensitive grasslands, wolf packs could help curb the spread of these exotics, allowing native grasses and forbs to rebound and reducing competition for water resources. Several species of non-native deer such as spotted sika, fallow, and red deer have been introduced across North America for hunting and farming. In regions where these deer have escaped, they often form stable populations that overbrowse understory vegetation, compete with white-tailed and mule deer, and transmit diseases like chronic wasting disease. The larger size and power of the new dire wolves would enable them to hunt these exotic deer effectively, particularly during rutting season when stags are more vulnerable. Predator pressure on non-native deer could reduce their numbers, limit grazing damage, and protect native plant communities and soil structure. Exotic antelope species, such as blackbuck, nilgai, and African antelope species, have become established in parts of Texas and the southeastern coastal plain where they graze on native grasses and croplands. Unlike pronghorn, these antelope lack the evolutionary history of coexisting with North American predators, making them comparatively naive and vulnerable to a novel apex predator. Dire wolf packs could exploit this naivete, preying on juveniles and isolated adults. By reining in feral antelope populations, rewilding efforts would reduce competition for native ungulates, improve pasture health, and decrease crop depredation, all while reinforcing natural checks and balances in these invaded ecosystems. Gemsbok are large oryx antelopes native to African deserts, but feral herds have been introduced to southwestern Texas and New Mexico. Dire wolf packs would likely target calves and injured adults, using chase tactics across open terrain. Their larger size compared to gray wolves enables them to stand up better to an adult oryx's defensive kicks, especially if they coordinate to isolate an individual at waterholes or feeding sites. Controlling feral gemsbok numbers would relieve intense grazing pressure on desert grasses and forbs, allowing native shrub species to recover. This restoration benefits pollinators dependent on desert blooms, and also reduces competition between gemsbok and native pronghorn or mule deer. Feral llamas, descended from domesticated stock, have established small populations in parts of the western U.S. where they browse on shrubs and grasses, sometimes competing with native ungulates. As mid-sized camelids, llamas would present manageable targets for wolf packs. Juveniles and isolated adults would be most vulnerable. Dire wolves could help control feral llama numbers, reducing their impact on riparian vegetation and mountain meadows, and thereby allowing native deer and elk to access higher quality forage. Interest in rewilding camels, both dromedary, C. dromedarius, and Bactrian, C. bactrianus, to recreate Pleistocene-era grazing guilds has emerged for arid western rangelands. Once established, camel calves and weakened adults would become prey for new dire wolves. Packs might exploit terrain choke points, for example canyon bottoms, where camels' cloven hoofs are less sure-footed. Introducing predator-prey dynamics between wolves and camels would keep camel populations in check, preventing trampling and over-browsing of fragile desert vegetation. This control fosters a balanced grazing regime, helping native shrubs and grasses regenerate, stabilizing soils, and supporting desert pollinators. The saiga antelope, native to Eurasian steppes, has been proposed for rewilding in open prairie regions of North America due to its ecological similarities to native ungulates. Saiga are fast-moving and form large seasonal aggregations. While adult saiga might evade predation through speed, dire wolves could effectively harry herds, isolating calves or sick individuals. Predation pressure would encourage more dispersed grazing, reduce local overgrazing, and help integrate saiga into North American grassland ecosystems with natural checks on their numbers. African and Asian elephants rewilded into North American savannas or grasslands would be formidable megaherbivores. Adult elephants are too large for dire wolves to hunt, but wolves could opportunistically scavenge elephant carcasses, accelerating nutrient recycling. Young calves or weakened individuals, perhaps at waterholes during drought, might occasionally fall prey to coordinated wolf packs. By scavenging, wolves help disperse elephant-derived nutrients across the landscape. Occasional predation on calves may slow local population growth, preventing overbrowsing and encouraging more heterogeneous vegetation structure. If woolly mammoths are brought back to tundra park habitats, newborn calves and weakened individuals in winter could be targeted by dire wolf packs. The wolves' pack endurance would allow them to pursue mammoth calves across frozen steppes. Calf predation would help regulate mammoth herds, preventing overgrazing of grasses and shrubs. This dynamic could promote habitat heterogeneity, benefiting steppe-adapted plants and animals, and fostering a more Pleistocene-like ecosystem structure. Capybaras thrive in wetland networks across the southern United States following unauthorized releases. Dire wolves would capitalize on capybaras' semi-aquatic habits, ambushing them at watering holes or riverbanks. By controlling capybara densities, wolves could reduce bank erosion and overforaging of aquatic vegetation, benefiting fish spawning grounds and waterfowl nesting sites. Tapirs in restored tropical woodland corridors of Florida or the Gulf Coast would be potential prey, especially during birthing seasons when calves are slow. Wolves' coordinated hunts could isolate tapirs in dense understory. Controlling tapir populations would prevent localized overbrowsing of seedlings and undergrowth, facilitating forest regeneration, increasing plant species diversity, and supporting nesting habitat for forest birds. As ecosystem engineers, beavers create ponds and wetlands that support high biodiversity. Dire wolves might occasionally prey on dispersing yearlings or catch rodents near beaver lodges, but their main influence would be indirect. By limiting ungulate browse around streams, they'd allow more woody vegetation to flourish, fueling beaver food supplies and promoting wetland expansion. River otters depend on healthy fish and amphibian communities in clean waterways. Wolves' role in conserving riparian vegetation and reducing sediment runoff via ungulate control indirectly benefits otter prey. Additionally, wolves scavenging fish carcasses may leave nutrient subsidies along streambanks, boosting invertebrate populations that otters feed on. Feral or abandoned domestic cattle have become ecological issues on rangelands, often forming unmanaged herds that overgraze and disturb soils. New dire wolves, with their large size and pack coordination, could take down calves and occasionally challenge solitary adults weakened by injury or illness. By reducing feral cattle densities, wolves could alleviate grazing pressure, allowing native grasses and forbs to recover and improving soil health and water infiltration. In areas like Florida and Texas, where escaped rhesus macaques form invasive populations, wolf predation would be largely opportunistic. Packs might target juveniles or isolated individuals, for example, those separated from troops while foraging. Predation on macaques could help curb their numbers, reducing competition with native birds and small mammals for fruiting trees and helping protect sensitive understory vegetation from overbrowsing. While most birds escape terrestrial predators by flight, ground nesting species, for example, quail, pheasants, waterfowl, and any flight-impaired or injured individuals are vulnerable to wolf packs. Wolves routinely investigate nests and will consume eggs, chicks, and fledglings encountered during hunts. This adds predation pressure that helps control overabundant ground nesting populations and encourages birds to use more varied nesting sites, enhancing habitat heterogeneity. The new dire wolves would opportunistically prey on lagomorphs and medium-sized rodents, especially when ungulate prey is scarce or during pack movements. By suppressing populations of rabbits, ground squirrels, and other small mammals, wolves help prevent localized overgrazing and burrow overabundance, which can destabilize soils and outcompete other small fauna. This mesopredator effect also complements smaller carnivores, fostering balanced small mammal communities and healthier grassland and shrubland ecosystems. The new dire wolves, being gene-edited from gray wolf stock, will be nearly identical to gray wolves at the genomic level, differing primarily in a handful of genes affecting body size, skull shape, and musculature. In regions where both occupy overlapping territories, competition for prey such as elk, deer, and moose could intensify. Because the new dire wolves are larger and possess more powerful jaws, they may be able to outcompete gray wolves for particular prey classes, especially large ungulates or bison calves, potentially displacing gray wolf packs from prime hunting grounds. On the other hand, their shared ancestry means they can recognize one another as conspecifics, so outright aggression might be tempered by pack avoidance behaviors rather than continuous conflict. Hybridization is a genuine possibility. Since the new dire wolves carry essentially the same reproductive biology as gray wolves, mating could produce fertile offspring that carry a mixture of traits. Over time, this could blur the genetic distinctiveness of both populations unless managed carefully through geographic separation or selective breeding programs. Mexican gray wolves, critically endangered and confined to the U.S. Southwest and northern Mexico, occupy higher elevation pine oak woodlands and scrub. Releasing new dire wolves in those areas would likely provoke intense resource competition, as both predators would target elk and mule deer in the same riparian corridors. Given the Mexican wolf's smaller average pack size and more restricted range, larger dire wolf packs might drive Mexican wolves into marginal habitats, exacerbating their already vulnerable status. Because both derive from Canis lupus, interbreeding could also occur, potentially contaminating the Mexican wolf's carefully managed gene pool. Consequently, any rewilding plan must either avoid core Mexican wolf recovery zones or provide robust genetic safeguards, for example, physical barriers or temporal separation, to prevent unintended hybridization and ensure Mexican wolf conservation goals remain paramount. Red wolves inhabit parts of eastern North Carolina and are a distinct species that evolved through historic gray wolf-coyote hybridization. Their preferred prey, white-tailed deer and smaller mammals, overlaps partially with that of larger canids. If new dire wolves were introduced into eastern forests, red wolves would face direct competition for deer and perhaps small elk, where ranges overlap. Given that red wolves are smaller and typically form smaller packs, dire wolves could push red wolves into suboptimal habitats or force them to specialize on smaller prey. Hybridization is less likely here because red wolves already carry coyote genes, but breeding could still occur between red wolves and new dire wolves, further diluting red wolf genetics. To protect red wolves, rewilding efforts should exclude their reintroduction areas or implement strict spatial buffers. Eastern wolves, native to the Great Lakes-St. Lawrence region, share ecological niches with both gray wolves and coyotes, frequently hunting moose, deer, and beavers. Adding new dire wolves into the same landscape would create a three-way dynamic in which eastern wolves, being intermediate in size, could be squeezed out of prime moose and deer territories. Although interbreeding between eastern wolves and new dire wolves is genetically possible, the larger dire wolf phenotype may dominate pack hierarchies if they share rendezvous sites, forcing eastern wolves to retreat to smaller prey or less preferred habitat. Managers could either choose release areas that avoid core eastern wolf ranges, for example, focusing on more open plains, or use prolonged monitoring to ensure eastern wolf packs remain viable. Arctic wolves inhabit remote tundra regions where human disturbances are minimal. In theory, introducing new dire wolves to subarctic or boreal transition zones would create competition over caribou and muskoxen. Because the dire wolves are gene-edited gray wolves, they can survive colder conditions, but may not be as well adapted to extreme Arctic photoperiods and snow conditions as pure Arctic wolves. If both share territory, dire wolves' larger size could give them an edge when hunting seals and large caribou calves on sea ice or coasts. However, the risk of interbreeding remains high, potentially eroding the specialized adaptations Arctic wolves have for extreme cold. Thus, rewilding in far north areas should proceed only after careful habitat suitability analyses, and perhaps with a transition zone that prevents direct overlap. Carolina dogs, sometimes called American dingoes, are small, wild, or semi-wild canids inhabiting southeastern U.S. forests and swamps. They hunt deer, small mammals, and birds, and avoid larger predators. New dire wolves would pose a major predation threat to Carolina dogs, potentially reducing their populations or forcing them into more remote, dense habitats. However, Carolina dogs' secretive and solitary habits may help them evade packs. Still, wolf presence might significantly reduce their range and numbers. Coyotes are highly adaptable and widespread throughout North America. They often scavenge wolf kills but also compete with wolves for small to medium prey. New dire wolves, being larger and more powerful, would dominate coyotes, likely killing them in territorial disputes and predation events. Coyotes might shift to more marginal habitats, urban edges, deserts, or increase nocturnal behavior to avoid direct contact. This dynamic could reduce coyote densities in prime wolf territories, restoring balance to prey populations previously pressured by abundant coyotes. Coy wolves, hybrids between coyotes and gray wolves, are common in northeastern North America. Being intermediate in size and behavior, they are often bold and adaptable. New dire wolves could outcompete coy wolves in areas where large prey dominate, killing individuals and limiting their spread. However, coy wolves' flexibility might allow persistence in fragmented landscapes or edges where dire wolves are less common. This competition could influence the genetic makeup of canid populations, possibly reducing hybrid prevalence in core wolf territories. New dire wolves and black bears would have a largely scavenger-competitor relationship. While wolves primarily hunt live prey, they readily scavenge carcasses, including those of black bears that died of natural causes or human conflicts, reducing disease risk by removing carrion. Conversely, black bears may usurp wolf kills, especially during summer and fall when bears are hyperphagic, leading to occasional aggressive encounters. Because black bears are smaller and less social than grizzlies, wolf packs may safely challenge solitary bears at carcasses, though direct predation on healthy adult bears would be rare. Grizzlies are dominant apex predators and powerful enough to stand their ground against packs of wolves. Grizzly bears would likely claim carcasses killed by dire wolves, especially in open terrain. However, dire wolf packs might be bold enough to challenge or at least delay grizzly feeding. The relationship would mirror wolf-grizzly dynamics in Yellowstone, competitive yet stable. Dire wolves could scavenge from grizzly kills, and grizzlies could return the favor. This scavenger relationship could strengthen the nutrient cycle across ecosystems. Bobcats, as solitary mesopredators, occupy a different niche from apex dire wolves. Wolves would rarely hunt adult bobcats, but bobcats may avoid overlapping territories to reduce risk of kleptoparasitism, theft of their small game kills, and incidental predation. Wolves could suppress bobcat densities indirectly by reducing populations of shared small prey, rabbits, rodents, leading bobcats to shift toward more forested or rocky refuges. Canadian lynx specialize on snowshoe hares and occupy boreal forests. New dire wolves, unlikely to prey on lynx directly, could still influence them through mesopredator suppression. By reducing coyote numbers, which compete intensely with lynx over hares, wolf presence often benefits lynx populations. Similarly, wolf-induced landscape changes, for example, healthier forest understories from regulated ungulate browsing, improve hare habitat, indirectly supporting lynx. Cougars are solitary ambush predators that overlap extensively with wolves across western North America. Wolves may kill cougar kittens at kill sites or drive adults from carcasses, while cougars occasionally retaliate by ambushing lone wolves. New dire wolves, being larger, may have the advantage in open terrain, pushing cougars into more rugged or densely vegetated areas. Over time, spatial and temporal partitioning emerges. Dire wolves hunt in groups across open country and roads, while cougars favor dense cover and nocturnal hunts to avoid packs. Historically found across the southern U.S., jaguars are making a slow, natural return. They are large, powerful cats that prefer forested or wet environments and hunt peccaries, deer, and sometimes caimans. If dire wolves are rewilded into the southwest, some overlap could occur. Jaguars could dominate in close combat, but packs of dire wolves might challenge solitary jaguars for kills. Jaguars would likely maintain deep forest or riparian territories, while dire wolves favor open or mixed landscapes, limiting direct conflict, but allowing for indirect competition for prey like deer and peccaries. Recent observations in South America and Central America suggest female jaguars can occasionally form cooperative, loose coalitions, especially when resources are abundant or cubs are present. These coalitions may increase a jaguar group's ability to defend kills from wolf packs. In forested areas, they could limit the wolves' ability to monopolize resources. Coexistence would depend on habitat complexity. Dense cover and ambush hunting give jaguar females an edge. In open areas, wolves might still dominate. Male jaguar pairs or groups sometimes patrol large territories cooperatively. These are aggressive and territorial animals capable of taking down large prey, likely the most dangerous jaguar-wolf encounter. Male jaguar coalitions could pose a serious threat to a dire wolf pack, especially if defending kills or territory. Packs may avoid areas heavily patrolled by jaguar males, and encounters could lead to fatalities on both sides. However, the low density of jaguars makes this a rare but significant interaction. The extinct American cheetah once thrived in open plains, preying on pronghorn and other swift animals. If modern African cheetahs are rewilded to replicate their ecological role, they would occupy open and semi-arid regions in the west and southwest. Cheetahs are sprint-based, solitary, or semi-social hunters, while dire wolves would rely on endurance and teamwork. Dire wolves could displace cheetahs from kills due to their pack size. Cheetahs may avoid regions with high dire wolf activity or become more crepuscular. However, like in Africa where cheetahs coexist with hyenas and lions, niche partitioning may emerge. The presence of dire wolves might indirectly benefit cheetahs by reducing mesopredator pressure, for example, coyotes, creating a more stable prey base over time. The American lion, Panthera atrox, was once the largest cat in the Western Hemisphere. Modern African lions, if rewilded, would mimic its ecological role in grasslands and open woodlands. Both lions and dire wolves would compete for large prey like bison, deer, and elk. Lions dominate smaller predators, but dire wolf packs could challenge solitary or small groups of lions over kills, likely competition similar to African ecosystems where lions and hyenas co-occur. Packs of dire wolves might avoid direct confrontation but will scavenge and challenge when conditions favor them. Together, these two predators could re-establish a powerful top-down pressure on large herbivore populations, maintaining savanna or prairie ecosystems. Alligators are dominant freshwater predators in the southeast U.S., particularly in wetland ecosystems. Interaction will be minimal due to habitat separation. However, at riverbanks or during droughts, overlap could occur. Dire wolves may scavenge alligator kills or vice versa. Young or careless wolves could fall prey to large alligators near water. A mutual predator-scavenger relationship could emerge, but the wolves would generally avoid dense swamp zones. More elusive and tropical than alligators, American crocodiles are found in southern Florida and the Caribbean coast. Similar to alligators, but even less likely due to limited range. Occasional competition or scavenging near coastal or brackish water zones, but interactions would be rare and low impact overall. Burmese pythons, introduced to the Florida Everglades, have decimated small to medium-sized mammal populations. They are ambush predators and difficult for most native carnivores to counter. Juvenile or isolated dire wolves could be vulnerable to large pythons in thick vegetation. Conversely, wolf packs may kill or avoid pythons once they recognize the threat. Dire wolves could help control python populations by hunting smaller individuals or preventing them from feeding easily. This would be a unique benefit over smaller predators like foxes or raccoons. Introducing dire wolves into Florida may indirectly help suppress python expansion, but only in specific overlapping zones. And now we will move on and talk about why Pleistocene rewilding is essential. North America once thrived with an incredibly rich tapestry of megafauna, from woolly mammoths and saber-toothed cats to dire wolves, American lions, and massive ground sloths. This biodiversity played a critical role in maintaining the health and balance of ecosystems across the continent. However, the end of the Pleistocene epoch, roughly 10,000 years ago, saw a dramatic collapse of this megafaunal web, largely due to climate shifts and human overhunting. What followed was a continent stripped of many keystone species, leading to ecological simplification, overgrown forests, imbalanced herbivore populations, and the loss of ancient predator-prey dynamics. Pleistocene rewilding, the idea of reintroducing ecological analogs or descendants of extinct megafauna, seeks to restore this lost equilibrium, and dire wolves or their modern equivalents are key players. Reintroducing new dire wolves could help restore essential top-down pressure on herbivore populations like deer, elk, moose, reindeer, pronghorn, and even bison. These large grazers, without enough natural predators, can overgraze ecosystems, leading to biodiversity loss and habitat degradation. Dire wolves operating in highly coordinated packs would naturally help regulate these herbivores across different biomes, from open plains to boreal forests. Moreover, their presence would also influence the behavior of prey species, fostering more dynamic and healthy landscapes through what ecologists call the ecology of fear. Beyond just native herbivores, dire wolves could help control invasive or feral species such as feral deer, antelope, wild horses, wild donkeys, feral zebras, feral llamas, and feral cattle. These animals, introduced by humans, often lack natural predators in North America and cause considerable ecological disruption. A large apex predator like the new dire wolf could fill this missing role, restoring pressure that helps curb population booms and landscape damage. Similarly, future rewilding plans may include ancient analogs like camels, saiga antelope, and even capybaras and tapirs, species that once roamed North America but vanished in the megafaunal collapse. The reintroduction of dire wolves could also rebalance predator guilds. Today, North America's apex predators are limited to species like gray wolves, red wolves, Mexican wolves, eastern wolves, Arctic wolves, coyotes, coy wolves, and American dingoes. Each has its ecological role, but none fill the niche left by the dire wolf, a robust, hypersocial predator built for taking down megafauna and defending kills from other carnivores. By sharing the landscape with these species, dire wolves would diversify predator competition and may even help reduce hybridization pressures on threatened wolves by creating new ecological boundaries. Interactions with black bears, grizzly bears, bobcats, cougars, Canadian lynx, and even reintroduced jaguars would reestablish a multi-layered predator system that once defined North America. This would lead to more complex food webs and healthier ecosystems. Female and male jaguar coalitions, for example, could share hunting grounds with dire wolves, just as lions and hyenas do in Africa. Each predator would carve out its own niche, hunting different prey or using distinct strategies, boosting biodiversity rather than suppressing it. Furthermore, future rewilding proposals may include species such as African lions, to replace the extinct American lion, and cheetahs, as analogs for the American cheetah. These animals, when combined with dire wolves, would replicate the incredible predator diversity of ancient North America. Meanwhile, the presence of dire wolves in wetland or subtropical zones could lead to interactions with native alligators, American crocodiles, and invasive species like the Burmese python. In such cases, dire wolves could even help control populations of invasive reptiles or scavenge from shared kills. Finally, the long-term vision of Pleistocene rewilding may include de-extinct or proxy species like woolly mammoths, elephants, and giant herbivores. Dire wolves would be vital in managing such megafauna and ensuring predator-prey balance. They may even help shape landscapes by moving prey herds, distributing nutrients, and influencing forest growth patterns. Interactions with smaller species like beavers, otters, small mammals, birds, and even introduced species like rhesus macaques would add layers of complexity and resilience to modern ecosystems. In conclusion, rewilding new dire wolves is not just about restoring a species, it's about healing the land itself. North America needs Pleistocene rewilding to revive the lost interactions between herbivores and predators, control invasive species, rebuild food webs, and reignite the ancient rhythms of life that once defined this vast continent. The dire wolf's return could be a symbol and a force for ecological renewal. As we've seen, bringing the new dire wolf back to North America isn't just about resurrecting a Pleistocene icon, it's about healing whole landscapes, restoring lost predator-prey dynamics, and reigniting processes that keep forests green, rivers clear, and grasslands thriving. By reintroducing a pack-hunting apex predator that can tackle everything from elk and bison calves to invasive boar and feral equids, we give our ecosystems the missing top-down pressure they desperately need. But rewilding is more than science. It's a partnership. It's working with ranchers to develop coexistence strategies, with indigenous nations to honor traditional stewardship, and with policymakers to craft safeguards for both wildlife and communities. It's a long road, full of adaptive management, rigorous monitoring, and shared responsibility. But the payoff is nothing less than a revitalized continent, teeming with biodiversity and resilience. If you believe in bringing the wild back to its full potential, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into rewilding, de-extinction, and the frontier of conservation biology. Drop a comment below. What species would you most want to see return to North America? And if you've enjoyed this journey through Pleistocene rewilding, check out our playlist on megafauna in the modern world to learn about other ambitious restoration projects. Thanks for watching, and until next time, let's keep forging a wilder, healthier future together.